Welcome back to Immigration Ain't Easy. I'm Mo Goldman, and I am joined on this episode by Dr. Michael Lokale, who's a good friend of mine. He's a doctor in family medicine. He epitomizes what I believe is the American dream story. I am thrilled to have him joining me. Michael hails from Kenya, which is in East Africa, surrounded by 5 other countries, the Indian Ocean, and some big lake. I don't even know what lake it is, but I looked at a map earlier, and then I was trying to figure out if Kenya was one of the most not landlocked, but surrounded by the most countries in Africa. But I was disappointed to find out that there was I forget what other country. There was some other country there with like 9 countries surrounding it. But I was looking. It was like Kenya is surrounded by Uganda, Ethiopia, Somalia.
Sudan.
What other country?
Sudan.
South Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
There might be
Tanzania.
Tanzania.
Mhm.
I think those are the 5 countries. So I've been sitting all morning trying to read up on my Kenya research here. But yeah, your journey to the United States was, I think, very interesting. And one of the lessons that I learned from hearing about your story when I met you, I think it was about 7-8 years ago, was the fact that in Kenya, opportunities are not as easy to obtain as they are in a country like the United States. And so you have to take your best skills, whatever you're really, really good at, and hopefully utilize that to be able to get to the United States or to achieve the American dream. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Mo. Appreciate it.
So were you born in was it in Kitale, Kenya, or where is that where you were raised?
So I was raised in Kitale, and by the way, that lake is Lake Victoria, named after
Oh,
the Queen.
well,
So,
there you
but I was born in about 200 miles north of Kitale, at a place called Lokale. And it's occupied by my tribe, the Turkana tribe. Now, when I was 2 months old, my father was killed in a raid, in a cattle rustling raid. A neighboring tribe, came in and stole all the cows. And the men usually defend the village, but he was unlucky that he was killed during that raid. Now, the reason why my mother moved us 200 miles south of where I was born is because she had 3 kids at the time, and all the property kind of reverts back to the man's family. So she went back to her mom and dad, and they couldn't help her raise the kids, so she had to kind of find a place she can work, maybe find another husband to kind of support her. So, but yes, I was raised in Kitale, so I spent all my formative years there throughout 8th grade, before I went to high school in Nairobi.
Was your father a farmer?
No, he was a nomadic pastoralist. So he had cattle, he had goats, he had maybe 1 or 2 camels, but they would just move from one place to another looking for pasture and water. That was their existence, and the kids were expected to do the same. As they grow, they kind of help out the village and the family in tending to those cows. And it was such a big um, trading, a commodity. The animals were. It was used in normal life. Like if you got married, you had to give a certain number of goats to the person whose daughter you're gonna marry. So it was very important. I mean, that's all they had. They had no money, but this is the medium of exchange, as it were.
Were you the eldest of the children?
I was not. I
Or the
was the
young?
third born. Yes, I
Oh,
was.
okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so It did. I would imagine it was a struggle for your mother after your father was killed, right?
Oh yes. So, when, the reason, so she moved down, 200 miles and she found work in people's houses. So she would clean people's houses, she would weed their land. She would just find any kind of work that can help her get, the next couple of shillings. But she didn't have an education, so she couldn't get an office job or anything like that. So this is what she was able to do. And you have to pay for schooling in Kenya, and it's an equivalent of maybe $5 to $8 a year. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. So she worked really hard to try to, to make sure that we had the access to education. And the way she explained it to us was, well, I don't have any inheritance that I can give you, but I hear that if I send you to school, you will be as successful as the children of the people whose houses I work in. That was her whole reasoning. So that's how she worked so hard to make sure that we got that opportunity to go to school.
So did you and your siblings all get like your primary, secondary educations completed?
Yes, we did. Yeah. So, and fun fact, my sister is actually the first woman from the tribe to get a PhD. So really proud of her. But this seed was planted by mom, in those, when we were in those formative years. Um, and it
What
opened a
type
lot of
of
doors for us.
what type of PhD did your sister
Leadership
get?
and sustainability.
And where does she live?
She lives in Kenya now. She's a
Okay.
consultant for the United Nations.
So you obviously, had to grow up with some, difficulties being without a father, and that sort of influence. Um, Tell me a little bit about how running was part because you were did you get into running as a child, or at what age did you start to do running, like more in a distance sort of capacity, or different speeds?
Yeah, so I actually discovered that I could run a little bit later than I had anticipated because most of the kids in primary school you kind of get into running because it's the national sport. But so I lived in the Rift Valley, which has some of the fastest people in distance running in the world. So, but I didn't really get into running because the headmaster of my school was all about academics. It's about getting into secondary school, and you had to perform really well, especially for me who didn't have any kind of money to pay for any secondary school. There was one secondary school that was actually able to give me a scholarship because of how well I performed in the national exam. So part of my the last 3 years of my primary school education was all about academics, so I never really did a lot of extracurricular activities. But when I was a sophomore, I remember I was playing volleyball with my classmates, and we had an elimination type of game, and my team lost. And we decided to just go on the track and run a little bit because PE was like 40 minutes, and we were eliminated in the first round. And we lined up, and we ran over 100 meters. And when we started running, after a couple of paces, I'm like, "Where is everyone else?" So that's when I discovered that I could run. And
you were
yes.
you were lapping them.
Not quite, but I was just way ahead of them. But also, once I started running, though, I started being, I participated in the school team. I was able to compete at the Kenya Secondary School national level. And I talked to my cousin Paul, who's an Olympic champion, and he told me, you could, let's see whether you can get a scholarship to go to the US because you can use the running to pay for school. And that's how I actually, came to be in the States.
So just stepping back, so
Mhm.
you uh, were doing really well with your academics, and so at a certain point, you wound up going to like an all boys school for high school, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
So
that was in Nairobi.
yeah, that's the Stereo Boys Center in Nairobi. So the way the education system works in Kenya is, at the end of eighth grade, you have to take this one big exam that lasts 3 days. So based on how you do on that one exam, it will determine whether you go to high school, what kind of high school you're going to go into, whether it's a national level school, which is really good, provincial, which is the next level, district school, and then the local school. So, for me, the only way I could actually pay for school was to make it to this one school, the Stereo Boy Center, where the director started the school to help poor kids who were bright but didn't have the means to get an education. And his whole thing was, you know, social destitution should not determine your social mobility. So he was able to raise funds from the UK, from Canada, from the US, to give these poor bright kids an opportunity to be someone someday.
And so your cousin is Paul Ereng, and he won the gold medal for Kenya in the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul, Korea, in the 800 meter. Um, were you really close with him growing up? What sort of influence did he have on you, knowing that he was such a high profile athlete in Kenya?
So I actually got closer to him after high school because when I was in eighth grade in high school, he was still living in the U.S. But once he moved back home after his education, I used to visit him often, for advice, for any kind of support that he would offer. And I'm so glad because we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and even if it's just a little bit of advice, that will go a long way in kind of determining what direction our life goes sometimes. So he was able to give me advice and kind of material support, and connect me with the right people to be able to get a scholarship to the Virginia Military Institute, and that's where I went to college.
And he had a pretty amazing story, right? Because he was not the top runner going into the Seoul Olympics. He was pretty much an afterthought, and then came out of nowhere, won the gold medal, and became like a national hero.
That's right. So he was a freshman at the University of Virginia, right? And he went to Europe for about 6 races. Was able to win those. He went to the Kenya trials, and sometimes when they don't know who you are, the selection committee can kind of
It's a lot
look
of
you over.
politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so what he decided to do, he tells me the story, he decided to make sure that he leaves no doubt that he's the guy that should go to the Olympics. But sometimes when you do that, you get over enthusiastic. So he tells me in the first 600 meters he was a 1:14, a minute and 14 seconds, and he just had to hold on to that last 200. So he came in third instead of winning because you just tie up, and that's just the way it goes. So he was third. The first two guys get selected, and the third guy is usually under the microscope of the selection committee. And he'll tell you the story, he had to talk to the president of the country to get on that team. Yes.
Get the permission.
Yeah. So, but he felt such an obligation because the president has now put his neck on the line here. He has to do something with this opportunity, right? So he really went after it, and I'm glad he won.
So applying for you to the Virginia Military Institute, obviously your academics were at a high level, but you were able to get a scholarship through your running abilities to go there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, yeah. And actually,
And
the
so
coach came and saw me run at a local meet in Kenya. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it was a means to an end. The running was what was able to drive you to get to the United States. Had you ever been to the United States before, like on a visitor visa or anything before
No,
you came
not at
here as a
all. I
student?
had never been on a plane. There was a lot of firsts for me.
Yeah.
I just heard about the country and what kind of opportunities you can get being here, and I liked it. And all the people who have traveled and studied here were doing pretty well. So I was pretty excited that I would get the opportunity to do it. But I had never been here.
What was your impression of the United States when you first arrived here? Did you fly through Washington, D.C.,
Yes,
or?
Washington D.C. Yeah, so I remember my coach picked me up at Dallas Airport, and I got in the car, and I remember thinking, "Wow, the trees here are so tall, and everything is so clean." And then I fell asleep, and the next thing I saw was the walls of barracks at the Virginia Military Institute, very in
Yeah,
Southwest
no
Virginia.
more, no more beautiful trees there, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So yeah.
and when you got into VMI and you first started there, did you have any doubts or like, obviously, people often get homesick and you grew up and lived your whole life basically, in one country. How did you react to this new adventure?
So for me, I was really happy about the opportunity to be here. And Virginia Military Institute is not an easy place to study. I mean, the accommodations are Spartan. The lifestyle is very, very tough on a lot of kids. Um, but for me, this was the best thing that could ever happen to me. My thinking was, I'm here to get a degree. If I quit now, I'll just be a high school degree holder, a diploma holder. There's no difference between me and somebody who was, back home, who just finished high school and didn't never got the opportunity to go to college. And then the other thing that I kept telling myself was, well, I don't have a return ticket, so we're just gonna
You have
make
no
this work.
choice. um, Now, when I first met you, one of the things you mentioned to me was that you have a fascination for the Civil War and history about Civil War. Did you have that when you came here, or did you develop this appreciation for the Civil War history and the you know the way things ended up turning out from there? Did that develop once you got to Virginia or before?
So, my fascination with war, started back home because, I'm fascinated with, what people fight for. And you can always look at it as freedom or the opposite, right? What people fight for. In Kenya, it was the Mau Mau War when we fought the British. I thought that was really fascinating. The apartheid war in all the fighting in South Africa. It's all always about that freedom, right? So when I got to VMI, what a place to study the Civil War, though. I mean, Stonewall Jackson, was there. Robert E. Lee was the president of Washington and Lee, and I think at the time they were making that movie Gods and Generals. So that I just thought it's always good to study and understand why people fight for whatever they believe in, whether you agree with it or not. It's always fascinating, the human condition, how that works.
To fight against oppression,
Hmm.
especially. Um, and so you got to VMI. Was that in the late '90s? What year did you start in Virginia?
That was 1999.
Okay,
Hmm.
and
And I was actually supposed to be there in 1998, but because of the embassy bombing of the U.S. embassy in Kenya, it was delayed by a year. So my classmates would have been very different people had I been able to come in 1998. But I'm glad I came in 99. Great cohort of people.
was your degree in biology?
Yes, biology with the major in chemistry.
Okay. Um, Now, through your time in undergraduate studies there, did you run the whole time? Were you part of the track team?
Yes, I was part of the track team and cross country team, and I was the captain of the cross country team the last 2 years of my being an athlete there, and track captain when I was a senior. So
Did you have a specific discipline that you were, more specialized in?
I
Like,
actually loved the 8 and the 400. That's where that was my wheelhouse. Cross country. I did it because we needed an extra guy, and it was good for my base training for the fall before the spring. So it turned out just fine. But the 4 and the 800 were really my passions.
did you struggle with assimilating at all?
No, so that's a really good question. So when I went to military school, my thought was, I am here to be part of the team. There's certain things that you have to do in the military, right? You kind of have, it's part of it. You have to march a certain way. You have to show up on time and do all these things. But for me, I just wanted to be part of the team. So I don't think it was that difficult for me to find my place in the regimental system, as it were.
Hmm. I read that there was a General Josiah Bunting who, as you were, I'm assuming, finishing your studies at VMI, encouraged you to apply for Rhodes Scholarship. Um, what did you know what what a Rhodes Scholar was, or any idea what that was about before the general, convinced you to go ahead and do that?
I didn't know much about it. So before I actually came to the States, I was leafing through one of the daily newspapers, and there was an advertisement. This is 1996, 97. Advertisement about Rhodes scholarships, and all the requirements that they wanted you to have to meet. And I remember looking at it, I'm like, well, I don't have a degree, so forget that. But my junior year, General Bunting, met, just kind of walked by me at one of these. It's such a small knit community. You see the president of the school just walking down the road there. It's like, hey, you're Michael Lokale, right? So you should really consider applying for the Rhodes Scholarship. You have the academic credentials. You're in the leadership in the Corps of Cadets. You have this physical vigor, as it were, because you're on a NCAA team. So you have all the requirements. You should really, really consider applying for this. And he is a 1963 Rhodes Scholar from the U.S. So he knows what the requirements are. So that's how that whole journey started for me.
How tedious was the application process?
So there's a good story about how this whole came to be. So it's a very I think the process itself weeds out a lot of people. So my between my junior and my senior year, General Bunting again reminded me, because it was time for me to apply for the road. So I went on the website and emailed the secretary of the Rhodes Scholarship Committee in Kenya. Didn't hear anything for a couple months, and then I was like, I don't know how the Kenyan Rhodes thing works, so I'm just gonna email the secretary of the American Rhodes Scholarship Committee, and they emailed me. Joyce Knight she's literally my knight in shining armor. So she emailed me back and said, "Hey, so there's been a change in leadership in the Kenyan secretariat. So here's the new email." So she gave me Janet Kabiru's email, and she emailed me back the next day, and she's like, "Hey, listen, you have 5 days to apply. We've been advertising this for months. You have 5 days to apply. Just give us like a personal statement. We can wait for letters of recommendation, but you really need to you know state your intent and why you think we should give you an interview." So so VMI is one is, if you want something to get done, you're in the right place. If you're a VMI, people help each other. People will bend backwards to help you. So I called the dean, and the dean kind of activated this whole network of professors and coaches and people like that who knew about me and what I've been doing at VMI. And you need, I think I needed 10 letters of recommendation and 10 copies of each, because they're going to give it to different committee members. I needed a personal statement. I needed a transcript to show, the academic stuff, and then a personal statement to say, hey, this is what I've achieved. This is my intention. This is what I would like to study. And, Oxford would be a great place for me to be. So, so we got all that done within that five days, and we sent it on FedEx. And I was able to get an interview for November, and this is like August or something. So it's really, when you have the support, it is amazing what you can do.
Yeah. And what I read was that Kenya only selects two,
Mhm.
or only selected two candidates.
Yes, and during
Um,
my year there was 250 applications, so I was one of
wow,
two. Yeah, and
that's crazy.
yeah, the other guy is an accomplished. He's just amazing. He's like an actuary. Yeah, Moses Morengu. He's great.
So, so you get selected, and that was in 2003, and
Yes.
then,
Hmm.
and then you graduated from VMI and went to Oxford.
Hmm.
Um, and so you go to Oxford, and had you ever been to the United Kingdom?
Yes. So it was 2001 when I was a sophomore. I did a study abroad through a scholarship of the English Speaking Union program at St. Anne's College at Oxford. So I was able to get to study some Elizabethan English and history. It was a fascinating time. 6 weeks there. I mean, you can explore the continent if you want to. But yeah, so it would have been my second time at Oxford.
Now, through all these years from like 99 up to your time going to Oxford, were you able to go back and visit your family in Kenya?
Yes, yeah. So I think I stayed here 2 years, and then after I did my Oxford stint, the study abroad, I went back home and I visited, and then after that, I think I did yearly until I got into medical school, and then it was a little bit more difficult. And then I was able to go back after in during residency to do like missions with a
Mhm.
couple friends of mine.
Was your mother able to come for your graduation?
No, so my mom actually died before I came here. When I was 19, she passed away. We still don't know what happened. We can speculate, but yeah. So, but my cousin Paul and his wife, and my sister Essa and her husband were able to come to my graduation.
And so you go to Oxford, and at that point, I think you told me, was there a time where you met the Queen?
Yep. Yeah. I
Talk
mean,
a little bit about some of your interesting experiences in Oxford.
man. So, I mean, Oxford will forever be like one of those times that you cannot replicate. So first of all, I met my wife there, Kathy. So
Yeah.
that's first. But so
Before the Queen?
she's the real queen here.
Yeah.
So and then so it was actually the 100th year. It's a centennial celebration for the Rhodes scholarships themselves. 2003. So we were invited to Buckingham Palace. To celebrate this 240 of us, you bust, and you just kind of go in. Nelson Mandela was there that night, so I met Nelson Mandela, the Queen, Prince Philip, and some other people. And then every other month, Rhodes House hosts international leaders. So the president of Malawi was there. Chirac from France was there. So lots of leadership opportunities, and just talking to thought leaders, not just in the UK, but all over the world. Um, and there was a time we went to the International Achievement Summit in New York, where they give out the Golden Plate Award. I mean, that's where all the names that were really big names in 2003, 2005, they were there, getting the awards. Denzel Washington, Sadly Field, Bill Clinton was our first speaker, and then Katie Couric was second. George Lucas was there, Colin Powell, Desmond Tutu. I mean, the list goes
Yeah, no,
on.
yeah. I mean, it's like you have to pinch yourself. You couldn't
Yeah,
believe like what you had gone from living, kind of a nomadic existence
right.
as a
Yeah.
child
Hmm.
to now you're, hanging out with the Queen and Denzel Washington and all these
Yeah.
well-known people.
It
That's
is
pretty amazing.
unreal. It is unreal. Yeah. I mean, Chris Matthews was interviewing Mr. Tenet. I think he was the CIA director. I mean, I mean, all these experiences are just like, this is unreal.
And I would be remiss to not mention that when you were selected as a Rhodes Scholar, you were the 10th in the history of Virginia Military Institute. You were the 10th selected. The only one prior to that was in 1967. So there had been 36 years before VMI had a Rhodes Scholar selected, which is pretty incredible if you think about the long, illustrious history of VMI.
Hmm.
That there was General Bunting in 1963, and then 67, and then there was this void for 36 years, and
Yes.
then
Yeah.
some guy from Kenya ends up getting it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I'm just so grateful that, sometimes it's just timing, sometimes you just
And
don't
were
know.
you
Yeah.
were you the first foreign national also to get a Rhodes Scholar from VMI?
As far
Because
as I
if I
know,
look
yes.
at the
Yeah.
list
Oh,
of
the rest of
names,
them
they
were, yeah, US
uh,
citizens. Yeah. Hmm.
I go down the list, and those names don't look very. They look very blue blood American.
Yeah. Smith
um,
Jones.
so you get over to Oxford and you meet Kathy, your wife.
Mhm.
Um, how did that happen? Like, and she was from Tucson, right? Tucson, Arizona.
Yes, yes. So she was from Tucson, and she had wanted to do a study abroad. So she stayed for 4 years to be able to afford, going abroad, and she chose to go to Dublin because her family has some Irish roots. Um, and while she was there, one of my great friends, Keith Benedict, who was classmates with Kathy in high school, he told me that his friend Kathy is gonna come visit. So he invited me over to dinner, and that's how we met.
And at that point, were you still in the mindset that you were going to go back to Kenya with the skills you had developed and help, back in your native land?
Absolutely, yeah. And even when I was in medical school, I still had that same mindset, and that somehow my whole thing was you got to build a hospital, you have to build something there. But when I was a sophomore in medical school, I met Paul Farmer, Dr. Paul Farmer. He's a Harvard. He was a Harvard infectious disease guy, like global health guru. And I talked to him about this. I'm like, because he had the Partners in Health, and I told him about my what I was thinking about doing, and his comment was, you know, your presence in Kenya is good, but if you sent resources, that's even better. Because when you're there in person, you may still be just kind of trying to survive like everyone else. You may not have the connections. But if you send resources back, that will go much a longer way than just being there. So that kind of changed my mindset, and of course, having kids and having a family kind of changes that whole thing.
And you see that a lot from immigrants who come to the United States, where they have a greater opportunity to have financial success, versus, where you might not have as much financial success. I mean, you'll have success being a doctor, but you can then have more that you can give and give back to those other countries. We've seen that with
Hmm.
numerous immigrants. They don't only help the United States and the communities here, but sending money or goods or whatever back to their homeland makes a huge difference.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And so you did your time at Oxford, and then after you were finished, you went back to Virginia for your medical school.
Yes, yeah. So I worked at the University of Virginia School of Medicine as a faculty member, as a research assistant in a lab there for a year while I was applying to medical school. And I was able to get into the Virginia College of Osteopathic Medicine in Blacksburg, Virginia.
And was Kathy, did she come back and live with you in Virginia, or were you like separate for some
Yeah, yeah.
time
So we
just
did
for
we did long distance pretty much for like 2 years, and she was working as a AmeriCorps Vista in Pittsburgh. So we would see each other, every couple of weeks. But once I got into medical school, we were engaged at that time, so we lived together in Blacksburg.
when did you end up landing in Tucson, Arizona?
So I came in 2010. Kathy's family is from here. They live 3 doors down from us. So when we were looking at residency programs, the U of A was very attractive to us because we would be in the same town, and her parents were getting older, so we decided to look west. And in 2009, I did a sub internship here at the U of A, and I really liked the people there. I liked the kind of medicine that they were teaching. So when I was ranking my programs to go to, the U of A was number one, and that's how we ended up here. And we never left.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got here. What was your impression of Tucson when you got here? I mean, as far as the community goes, and the obviously the climate
Hmm.
is a lot different than Virginia, and I think even Kenya is pretty like it's a tropical sort of climate, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So I mean, Kathy was very strategic. I think she brought me. The first time I ever came was in December. It was so nice.
Yeah, welcome to Arizona, bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I was here in December. I was like, this is nice. It was kind of drier, but not overly so. It was kind of a semi-arid. But I feel like, Tucson is, while it's a city, it has a small town feel to it. So, you'd be surprised, you meet someone, you're like, oh yeah, they know the same people, but you get everything that you need here. So, and at the university, actually, one of the things that I was looking at was they had a big refugee population in Tucson, and most of my patients actually were Swahili speaking patients from the Congo, from Rwanda, Burundi. So that I had such a big following at the university when I was a resident because language barrier was not a thing. So it was pretty much like my colleagues will see all the Spanish speaking patients. I'll see the Swahili. Then you don't have to be on the translator phone ever, and the clinic would be much more efficient.
What languages do you speak?
So English and Kiswahili, and then two other African languages. So Turkana is my native mother tongue, and then Kalenjin is the where we moved 200 miles down. We lived with a different tribe that speaks Kalenjin, and 95% of all the runners in distance runners from Kenya are from this one tribe, the Kalenjin tribe. So I speak their language.
What would be what would you attribute their abilities to run? Is it the area they train in, grow up in? Like, why are they so good at that skill?
I think there's a couple of things that contribute to it. It's always multifactorial, right? So they live in an area that is 8,000 feet above sea level. So there's just that kind of insensible training to your lungs. You're able to carry more oxygen than the average person. And then the people who are successful in the area are all runners. So everyone is like, I want to be like Kip Keino. I want to be like Paul Ereng. I want to be like that guy. So it's really part of the school culture, the community culture, to run. And then our diet is very, very carbohydrate based, not a lot of protein, and you walk everywhere. You don't have a lot of Western conveniences like cars and bicycles and things like that. So
Or
all these
Circle
things, I think,
K's?
combined, yeah.
You don't have a Circle K on every corner
No, no, not even a
with
QT.
Doritos.
No.
um, so you decided to go into family medicine.
Mhm.
Why did you choose that route? What was your purpose and reasoning behind doing that?
So for me, I think you can practice family medicine anywhere in the world. You don't need complicated instruments. You don't you just have to listen to the people and try to help them as much as you can. The other thing is I love people's stories. People tell me all kinds of things. You're the keeper of people's stories, and I think communication and just my personality fits family medicine very well.
And the I have noticed there has been, like you said, a pretty significant increase in uh, African asylees, refugees, immigrants that have come to Tucson, whether that because they were their placement was here through the United Nations, or they just found their people, the people that they have a connection with. And so it is pretty incredible that we do have in Tucson, Arizona, of all places, a pretty large community of African, not, I mean, West African, East African, you name it, from all over. And do you still end up having a lot of them as your patients?
Some, yeah, some. I think most of them live, downtown, so it's quite a commute to come up. But I have people who drive from Phoenix to come see me. I have a patient who comes from Casa Grande to come see me. So they still kind of reach out, and we're also involved with the church, and we do a lot of closed drives and other things that so it's not just in the professional setting but also church. We're really involved, as Bigimba is a big part of that whole thing.
So let me ask you, kind of piggybacking off of that, from a philanthropic perspective, are there specific organizations? And I always like to ask people about this because I like to promote, good causes, good nonprofits, good organizations that
Mhm.
people like yourself would you want me to mention or share. Are there specific organizations that you are the most passionate about working with and helping?
So for me and Kathy and the kids, I mean, we love the World Vision. So World Vision, I will plug them every day. Not only for clean water. As I've done marathons for World Vision and raised money for them, but we also sponsor kids, orphan kids from Uganda, Guatemala, wherever. That's the first place that I would tell people about. And then there's a smaller organization. It's called OLO. It's OOLO Foundation. And this my buddy and I we made a commitment to raise money to have a lunch program in a school back home. Some of us we would leave in the morning with you just have one cup of tea. You go home, you go to school, you run to school, and then you come back at like 1 o'clock Mom was never there, so there was never food. So you run back to school. So some of us didn't really have lunch when we were in school, in elementary school. So my friend F1 and I were like, what can we do to change kids' lives? So there's a school that is next to where his farm is, and for $1,000, $1,000, you feed 300 kids for 3 months. I mean,
Wow. I will
it's
make sure
amazing.
to
Yeah.
put those links up when I post this
Hmm.
interview, um, like I've done with others, like L. I think do you know L from Tucson, Senegalese? If not, I'll have
I
to
think I've
introduce
met
you.
him. Yeah, I've met him.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he founded a nonprofit called the Forgotten Children, where he helps children back in Senegal.
Hmm.
Very similar type of mindset. Um, I'll get you some more info about him.
Hmm.
And then my other question I had was what you know the American when people say American dream, the American dream, like that gets used a lot. It becomes a bit cliche sometimes.
Hmm.
What does the American dream mean to you? If I asked you, what is the American dream? What is that?
So for me, it's the opportunity, right? The multiplicity of opportunities that you have here. Back home, I mean, I had one opportunity, and I had to cling to that like my life depended on it. Here, you have a little bit more options. So for me, it's about at least having a fair shake at being successful. If you're not successful, you have another opportunity here and there. But yes, but as we know, potential is nothing, right? You can get that opportunity. What do you do with it? For me, the American dream is getting the opportunity and doing something with it. Nothing is given. Nothing is given. So you still have to put in the work. You still have to build those connections. You still have to do all the things that you need to do to make sure that that is successful.
And I think you have to sprinkle in sometimes a little bit of luck.
Hmm.
There's always, everything has a little bit of luck, but also the support of others. And I found a quote that you had about General Bunting, where you said you were thankful for the persistence of Superintendent Lieutenant General Josiah Bunting in preparing you for this Rhodes Scholar application process. And that without support from people like General Bunting, you may not have an opportunity like that
Absolutely. Yeah.
opportunity
And
or know about it.
absolutely. So and as my life has just been things kind of lining up, and things lining up means there's someone there standing, to help you. I mean, you can go back, my mom was there, and then, Dr. Griffin, the headmaster of my high school, was there. Paul was there. My coach was there. General Bunting was there. The dean of the medical school was there. It's just all these people that, are in your path. Or, as I say, God put them in my path to kind of help me along. And that's why I teach medical students, and that's why I participate in state affairs with our medical association, because you have to give back. You never know what impact you're going to have on someone's life, on a student, on a fellow colleague, whatever, because you may just be that person that they needed to talk to, they needed to see, they needed to kind of figure out what their next step is.
You mentioned that Dr. Griffin you have a son named Griffin.
Yes, I
Did that
named
play
him. Yep.
the name?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because for me, it will always be a reminder of he is the guy who had the foresight, had the vision to say you don't have to be rich to make it in this world. You don't have to be rich to contribute to society. And he worked really hard to get those scholarships for those kids. And I was one of those kids who he extracted from a village, in a remote village, and completely opened doors for me. So, and I'm, Kathy will tell you, I fought and fought to make sure that was his name. And then for Henrietta, we're like, okay, Henrietta sounds good.
Yeah, well, we I can't even remember how we came up with names of our kid. We were like, let's look at the most popular names for 2004 or something like
That's
that.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you still run. How many you've run multiple marathons? Do you know how many marathons you've completed?
I think we're at a 12 now. But, of those, I've done, two Chicagos, five Bostons, and then the sprinkling of others here and there.
And you've used those to fundraise as well.
Yes. Yeah. I've used that to fundraise for World Vision mostly.
What's it like as far? This is something. I mean, I think can be a struggle uh, for some people, like myself, getting up and training for a marathon, and then also being a doctor and having a full time job and a family. Is that a big challenge to have to be able to get up so early and train and constantly do the training that's required?
It can be. But so it all started because, I was like, I really need to get healthy. So that was, the first thing that we decided, I got to be healthy. So what can I do? I can run. So, and then it comes to, well, if I run I can't run during the day because my time is not my own. I have patients, I have family, that kind of thing. So I had to make the time. It's about making the time. If you make it as the priority and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, it can be done. So I run in the morning because that's the only time that I can do it. And then I make the joke. I'm like, well, it gets me out of bed, so let's do this. And then I think, to what we were talking about though, it's about support. Kathy supports my running. The kids know that it's part of how I can keep
It's your
healthy.
routine.
But
Yeah.
also, I have seven other crazy people who run with me.
Mhm.
So my
Community
teammates,
support.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's part of the community, and if I don't show up at 3:45, Lauren will be running alone, and
Yeah.
that's just not cool.
Um, a couple other questions. Your favorite dish from Kenya, what is that? I know I've had this dish that you made is like a stew.
Yes,
Is
yeah.
that the dish that you like the most,
I
or
love this
what's your
too. Yeah, I love this too. But if you were to ask another tribesman from my tribe, they'll probably say milk. But I'm lactose intolerant, so that's out of the question.
I thought you were going to say McDonald's.
No.
Which reminds me of, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Gods Must Be
Yes,
Crazy,
I did. Yeah.
where the guy throws the Coke bottle and it lands and
Yep.
they
Yep.
think it's a message from God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. No. So
Yeah,
it's a stew, and you can serve it with the ugali, which is the cornmeal. And I mean, as you know, I grew up really poor, so we had chicken twice a year, and it had to be a special guest. So when I came here, and you can have meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yeah,
Well, I had arrived, man. What are you complaining
yeah,
about? Spartan conditions at the Virginia Military Institute. No, this is great.
yeah. I mean, that must have been a shock to your system. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
all the suddenly your breakfast is like your meal for a month
Yeah.
if you
Exactly.
were back
Yeah.
in Kenya, like calorie
Right.
wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's amazing you didn't have the freshman 50, I guess
Oh,
you'd call
my
it.
coach would not let that happen.
No,
Just run me
especially
more.
since you had to. And then, as far as your future and what do you have goals that you've set in your mind for the next several years and the work you're doing, or just continue doing what you're doing, or do you have any interesting lofty goals, writing a book or anything?
So, I mean, Kathy really wants me to write a book, so that may
I think you
happen.
should.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I think I want to write a book. I want to get my kids through college. and then travel. We travel as much as we can, given my work schedule. But maybe one of these days, I'll do more mission trips than than just pleasure travel, as it were. But but right now, we're in the thick of it. The kids are busy, so we have to do that part of it. But that will come. That will come. But I'm still involved with the medical association in Arizona, and at the national level, I'm in a couple committees. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, the other thing I forgot to ask, you became a U.S. citizen,
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
What year did that happen?
This was 2012.
And what was that experience like going to have your oath ceremony? I mean, was that special for you? Did Barack Obama get up on the screen and say a few words?
Yes, that was really empowering for me. And Paul and the family came from El Paso. Um, Keith's parents were there. The guy who introduced Kathy and I. So all my people were there, and it was really a powerful ceremony. Yes, Barack Obama was the one who was on the screen that year. And a couple of people kind of stood up and gave their testimony, what it means to them. I didn't. Um, and part of it is I just wanted to have this self-reflection of how far I had come, and I did not need to do that part of it. But it's just one of those things that if I had stood up to say something, I would have been saying, this is where I get an education. This is where I have now found family. This is where, if it wasn't for this country, I wouldn't have a Rhodes Scholarship. It wouldn't be, a thing. This is where I now want to build, a medical
Your
practice.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but,
So this
it
is
was, it
your
was very
home.
powerful.
Were you the only Kenyan to get your oath done that day? I
Yes.
would
Yeah.
imagine so.
Yes. There was one Somali guy, and then there was me.
And like 40 Mexican people.
Yes. No, it was 200. I don't know.
That's the best part of those ceremonies when they have you stand up and they have each country and it's like, okay, if you're from Kenya, stand up. If you're from Somalia, stand up. And
Yeah.
it's like one person. And then they always wait to the end and
Exactly.
they're like,
Yeah.
who are we forgetting here? And they go, oh, Mexico. And then
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
400 people stand up. Well, I am going to leave you with one good laugh. I'm going to show you a shirt and you can tell people who's on my shirt.
Uh-huh. Love it.
It's Rafi, the billboard lawyer guy. I thought
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole jingle that goes with that, right?
Yeah, the Rafi
Call
jingle.
Rafi Rafi.
I have a Rafi T-shirt. Well, on that note, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, your weekend, to tell your story. I think it's important that your story and other stories from immigrants from all walks of life are shared. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
And again, this is Immigration Ain't Easy. You can find it at immigrationainteasy.com, which hopefully you know since you're hopefully listening to this. And thank you to Emma Goldman, the producer of my podcast, until she decides not to produce it anymore. So thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you so much, Mo. Have a good day.